Why do people fail in prelims? What is your understanding of the prelims exam? Basically, let's take a step back from current affairs and understand why we are all here for. We are here to clear the exam. What does it take to clear the exam? And why do people fail? Okay. So to understand this, you shouldn't look at the exam from some, a topper's advice or some elimination tricks or some jugaad techniques or focusing on truckload of current affairs that people like me will day in and day out give you. You can't rely on these information driven techniques because that is not the intent of the examiner. So what is? To understand this, you should understand the architecture of the examiner mindset, which is based on education psychology. You have to understand your mind, you have to understand the psychology of how the examiner sets the questions, and it is documented through a discipline called education psychology. Within the domain of psychology, you have something called education psychology. Okay, and this is a documented research. You have this teacher training, right? Within the domain of teacher training only, you will have something called Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, Bloom's taxonomy refers to the various stages that a student should pass through to see a gradient of how the learning evolves. So this is a representation of the so-called Bloom's taxonomy. Let me explain why this is relevant for our prelims preparation and the fundamental mistake that everyone in the market is doing, so that they avoid that and move towards improving their chances of clearing this exam. Take a look at this levels. See, you will see various levels in how education progresses, because that is how our mind also progresses. I'm talking about the average mind. We are not talking about exceptional norms or exceptional students here. Let's all consider the average student. There are criticisms for this classification of psychology too. Let's not get into that. I'm assuming that it is, for all practical purposes, an average student who is giving this exam. So every average student should pass through the steps. And a mistake, before we begin this, I'd like to clarify. If it is a mistake to see that this is superior and this is inferior. Look at this remembering part. People think this is a very low level skill and they glorify this. But you have to understand that without this, this is the basis of this triangle. The base is, if the base is shaky, you won't reach the pinnacle. Okay? So every student should necessarily, according to me, necessarily pass through the stages. So I've had the opportunity to mentor almost 50 to 60 rankers and many other people who couldn't clear the exam. I myself went through various experiences of failure and success in this exam. And what I'm presenting to you is a culmination of all that experience, and I'm presenting in front of you the logic of what it takes to clear this exam. Why am I beginning with this? Why am I not directly beginning with current affairs? If you don't understand the why, the what will never make sense. Clear? Now, what are the 6 stages? It begins with remembering stuff, which we are all acquainted with. The foundational classes. Whatever you get taught in the class, the so-called foundation class, begin here. They will give you a context, give you notes, and they'll ask you questions from this. If you take a look at the trend analysis of previous year questions in the last 5 to 8 years, you will notice that rarely you will get questions from this remembering layer. But without this, you cannot achieve any other stage. Nobody is going to ask, where will you find Red Fort? Those kind of questions anymore. But without knowing where Red Fort is, you would not be able to solve the other peripheral questions. The logical elimination is contingent on you being aware of this fact. So without facts, it is difficult to arrive at this upper level stages. Okay? What is the source of these facts? Your basic NCRTs. We tend to over glorify other sources. But get back to basics. Stick to NCRTs as the basis first. Then you have your Lakshmikant's, newspapers, etc. etc. But newspapers are rarely the source of information to clear this exam. It has a better role. I'll get back to that. Why I am saying that newspapers are important, why these classes are important, I'll get back to that. First is the remembering layer, and rarely you will get direct questions from here. And if you are just focusing on remembering and remembering, it's unlikely you will clear this exam. Because the moment you see the questions, it feels like, I've never seen this question. How can I even mark a right answer? Then you have the understanding layer. What is the meaning of understanding layer? For example, when I give you the word or the adjectives of preamble, they have an underlying concept. What do you mean by a republic? It has a certain connotation, it has a certain context. Why is it important? Those concepts, conceptual clarity, as we all know, forms the second layer of this prelims preparation. For example, if you don't know inflation, the meaning of inflation, the different kinds of inflation, the supply and demand side factors which impact this inflation, this understanding layer will be difficult to score. Like, you will get some questions here, you cannot afford to miss any question that comes from this understanding layer, basic concept. Mostly, nowadays, if you're getting this understanding layer level questions, it is mostly from commonly seen terms in the news. For example, 2021 or 22, I don't remember exactly, there is some some term like, in the context of stock markets or something, there is a sign beta 21, I guess. What does it mean? It's an understanding layer question. So you'll get questions like this from current affairs. The other day we have seen, what do you mean by the word just transition? So terms in news will be important in this context. And again, you cannot depend on a huge pile of information for this. Mostly you have to constrain yourself to the themes from the previous year questions and the corresponding current affairs. For example, why are we studying about just transition as a term? Because the larger theme is energy transition. In that context, there is a continuous discussion on this theme. That word will mean something. Similarly, what is greenwashing? All this kind of terms in news, especially in the context of environment, will be important for the understanding layer. Okay? So it is easy to score here, and you should rarely make any mistake here also. Now, apply. You are using the definitions or the concepts or the facts. Definitions, concepts, context, and fact to solve um, some questions. For example, there is this question from CDS. I'll give you a context. I don't remember the exact question, but I'll give you the gist of it. There is some term X from history. Is a work on music. It is commissioned under the aegis of who among the following? A, B, C, D. There are some options like this. This is the question. There is some work given which you have not seen in your traditional textbook. If you are a student from the remembering layer or the understanding layer, what would your approach be like? You will give up. You will be like, oh, I have not studied this, so it is impossible for me to approach this question, and you will move on. But if you move on like that, you will hardly find 25 to 30 questions in your paper. And within them also, your memory will sometimes ditch you. So net, you will get 45 marks or 50 marks at max, which is not enough for you to clear this exam. So you need to improve the probability of your success based on certain established logic and other layers of the learning procedures. The reason why people are not able to score marks is because they're stuck in the first and second layer only. Clear? Now, in this question, it is a question on history, and the keyword, if I were approaching this question, I would be focusing on this. It is a work commissioned under the aegis of which of the following? Then you have options like Mirabai, Tansen, Raja Tudarmal, and Raja Mansingh. If you see the options here, there is only one person who is capable of paying. It is commissioned, it is paid for, and it is a work that is done by someone else. Among the given options, who is more likely to pay for that kind of work? The word itself is Raja Mansingh. He's a king. Rest of the people are Bhakti saint or poets or important luminaries in the courts of some other king. This is knowledge. But the logic of observing this and thinking it can be this and applying that logic to arrive at this answer, taking that calculated risk, is what takes you across the line. But how do you get there? Through practice. Practice of what? First is previous year questions. Then it is easy to make difficult questions. These days, the problem is most of the papers are making it difficult and expecting the students to apply it in this layer. That is, question papers or test series are making it even more difficult and sometimes are designed in the way that you are expected to remember or understand these concepts, which will derail your preparation. You will end up preparing so much of information that your mental energy is gone by the time you are supposed to reach higher levels. So the body of knowledge that you need to consume is limited. But the way in which you apply, the skill that it takes will always level up. And if you're stuck here, most of the students, they don't write exams. And they don't write exams with a fear that they'll get low marks. So what? You should know why you are getting low marks in the first place. And the common assumption, because it is an objective question, because it is a multiple choice question, which is easy to score if it is in these two layers. The fact that nobody ever told them that these layers exist, they confuse it for these layers and end up memorizing everything. Even in the context of PYQ analysis. What do you mean by this PYQ analysis? What do you mean by analysis in the first place? What is analysis? Yes? See, you all analyze something on a day-to-day basis. You say, I am brainstorming, I'm analyzing. But what is analysis? See, the word analysis can mean different things to different people. I'm inviting answers. There is no wrong answer here. Just tell me whatever it is. So, looking at the source. Trends. What else? Why? Context. What else? Traps. Okay. What else? What do you mean by nature of questions? Can you elaborate? Okay. I would say pattern. Pattern of questions. What else? Is there anything else? Options. Elimination of options is based on what? These factors only. So basically, if you have to clear prelims, what does it take? Now tell me. Can you prepare everything under the sun and with your knowledge clear this exam? But what is preparation now? The ability to take a judgment on what method you should be taking in these levels to arrive at the right answer. That is preparation. So if someone is helping you to clear this exam, there needs to be a method. You cannot rely on a sea of information. You will always be insufficient. You will always find that you're not good enough to remember everything because that is not the demand of this exam. So what do we do? If you have to eliminate the probability of your failure, you need to pass through a system. I personally like this book. I mean, there are a lot of my mentees here. I must have told you many times, motivation, willpower, and all this gyan is overrated. You have seen people telling you that you have to be extremely passionate in what you're doing. As far as prelims is concerned, I'll say just the opposite. Be extremely mechanical and logical. Put your emotions out of the window because it doesn't help you always. For most of the candidates. Because the minute your emotions come into the picture, it increases your attachment towards that preparation and your logic goes for a toss. So you either raise to the level of the systems that you have in your life. That is, the minute you wake up, you know what to do. You have to pass through certain stages, go through those stages, repeat. That is how you will clear the prelims exam. It doesn't matter how much knowledge you have. You are just training your muscle memory. Okay? How you are training your mind to see patterns. I'll just tell you something very interesting. Now that we're in the age of AI, how do you think machine learning happens? There is something called synaptic pruning in our mind. How our neurons are wired and tuned in the direction of some expertise when you keep on doing the same thing over a period of time. This concept is called synaptic pruning. If you want to know about it, you can go and check on Google. So, an expert is someone where the synapses in their mind are tuned only in one direction. Okay? So, if you were to become an expert in prelims, you have to become a master in identifying the patterns of the questions. Your reaction time should reduce and reduce and reduce. Same is the logic for mains. Mains is physically straining, prelims is mentally straining. Okay? The game in mains is physical strength. Of course, mental endurance is required, but it is all the more required in prelims. And if you want to reach your peak at a very low mental energy, for example, you have a very powerful engine. If you have a bike which will go to 0 to 100 in 3 seconds, what does it mean? It's an extremely powerful engine. But if you are, aiming to do that on a scooty that is 25-year-old, how likely is it going to take you to 100 kmph in 3 seconds? Very unlikely. So, if that is the demand, you have to rewire your engine, and it's not going to happen in a single day. Okay? Why am I giving you all this gyan is because you have to understand the nature of this exam. The nature of this exam warrants that you move away from knowledge alone and focus on pattern recognition, improving the sense of judgment, again based on previous year questions, and mapping those previous year questions to static as well as dynamic. Okay? I'm nowhere suggesting that current affairs is unimportant, but the choice of the information that you pick should always be mapped to the previous year question analysis. And here is where I'll help you. Out of the 1,000 things that you are supposed to prepare, we will narrow down to the most important concepts which will improve the probability. See, it's like that famous Bruce Lee quotation. Either practice 10,000 kicks one time or one kick 10,000 times. If the quotation made Bruce Lee what he is, I would subscribe to that quotation only. So we are supposed to give up the illusion of knowledge. Anyone who cleared this prelims is because they've mastered this pattern recognition. It's somehow intuitive. And now you have to know what does it take to pass through these layers. And here is where I propose a 7-step process for each one of us to go through the entire procedure. Step 1 is basic concepts, remembering and analysis, or understanding, not analysis. Remembering the first 2 steps. That will help you log the subject. What will be the sources? Any basic source. NCRTs are must, or whatever class notes that you picked up, those will form the basis. And out of all the things that you pick up, again here, my first priority would be something where Pareto's principle applies. What is this Pareto's principle? The 80-20 rule, as it is famously called. Your 80% of the result comes from 20% of the efforts. Just to put things into context here, let me apply that in the context of polity. Let's say, in polity, if you carry out the previous year question analysis, you would notice that fundamental rights preamble, or in short, article 1 to 51A will have the first priority. Then you will have parliament as the second priority. Rest all will come later. If you were to prepare the topic of polity, let's say you are getting 15 questions from polity, 10 questions were from static. And out of the 10 questions, if 6 questions are coming from these areas, both current affairs as well as static combined, don't you think we should spend more time here? So, our choice of information should first grab the low-hanging fruits. And in every subject, first focus on the Pareto's principles and finish the current affairs, previous year questions, static part there. Okay, then you can move to the other important areas. And the surprising part is, if you stick to this principle, you can get up to 75 marks without breaking a sweat. But provided you have to keep your mind calm. If you are panicking on the day of the exam that I have not studied anything, nobody is going to help you. If you are logical enough and you want to improve the probability of your success, go by statistics, go by probability. And if you do that, up to 60 marks is going to be based on this Pareto's principle throughout the static. And some basic effort on current affairs. That is the reason why most of you end up here irrespective of the preparation. Because it's very easy to get here. The real game starts over and above this. Here is where you have to go through so many phases. Then you will take up the previous year questions, look at the language, like one of our friends said, we have to look at the traps. Okay? Then you have to look at how do I apply this in the present context. I'll show you an example how we will do that. Then we reverse engineer. All of this in bits and pieces, everybody is aware. But in the order of priority, which one should take precedence? Let's say if there are 3 statements, you know one of them is illogical. Okay, you eliminate. Now what? There are 3 more options. What is the order of priority in which you have to move? Again, that should be based on science. It should not be based on any jugad or shortcut technique or some kind of a quick fix. It shouldn't be like that, right? So, what is the decision logic will be the 7th step, the most important step. At least 50-50. You should at least reach that 50-50 stage. Like you eliminate, let's say if you're playing the Kaun Banega Karotpati situation, every question should be approached like you are using the 50-50 option, lifeline. Reach till that point and take the risk. Your risk-taking ability again will be trained through your practice. And it depends from person to person. If you're someone struggling to take the decision, write more test. For some people, it is not a big deal. Once they go through this process, it feels very easy for them. Who are you? You decide for yourself. Don't go by the logic that this topper wrote 150 tests, so I will write 150 tests. It can be counterproductive to you. Let's say you pick up a test series of one market player and you train yourself again and again on the same line of questions. At the end of the year, once those questions are revised and you are ready with that, UPSC changes the pattern. You can't adapt in the final minute because that is who you are, that is your weakness, and you realized it on the day of the exam. So don't be attached to any blind illogical advice. Know what works for you, and the only way you will know is when you sit down and write at least 8 to 10 questions, 8 to 10 question papers. It is not going to happen magically by writing some random papers. Sit with previous year questions first. And when you are struggling and you realize what is not working for you, you will start acting in this direction. That's the reason I made you go through this. So you always say that you have to increase the number of attempts. It's correct. But if the paper is difficult, you should be in a position to take that call. Should I apply more questions? Apply this logic for more questions, or should I stop? The ability to take that judgment again comes from your hold on the previous year question, patterns, knowledge, practice. It's a gold mine and it is not easy to execute. Sometimes going through every question, options, practicing in a very structured format. A lot of people, I'll tell you one example, what are the mistakes done. I'll show you how people prepare for that also. So these are the usual things, how to get rid of this fear aspect and how to improve the probability. This all requires, again, a system. Now, it is in this case, you will go through 7 different kinds of wrong statements that usually UPSC picks up. I'm not going into that nitty-gritties of language right now because it comes only after the first 2 layers are over. You remember, you understand, and only then this will start. So, if you are given a set of 4 options or multiple statements, how do you arrive at the answer? You need to pass that question through a kind of a sieve. You know what is a sieve? Like you pass the sand through a sieve, and depending on the size of that sieve, the respective particles will pass to the next stage. Similarly, you pass that entire question through a 4-layer logical structure, which has 7 different statements. The first layer is the logic filter. So it's basically a filter. Second stage is vocabulary filter, identity filter, and data filter. I will name it like this, 4 layers of filters. We'll get back to this. Once you pass through these respective stages in the same particular order, you will arrive at a 50-50 statement. If you arrive there, you will have to take a call. Because let's say even if you apply for 10 questions, if you are net positive, your score will move in the positive direction. If you are so trained in this thought process, it's unlikely that 10 out of 10 questions that you take are going to be false. It's not going to happen, statistically speaking. Because you are trained in that method, and UPSC doesn't move away drastically from established patterns. If it does, not only you, your competitor will also see a reduction in the score. That's the reason why 2023 had just 70 odd marks as cutoff. If it is difficult to you, it is difficult for your competitor too. Your only job is not to score 150, 160 marks. Your only job is to clear the cutoff comfortably. If 75 is the cutoff, score 90. If you want to clear IFOS, score 95. That's all. You don't have to be the master of every topic that is out there. Okay? What is the bare minimum? Start there, build over and above that. Eliminate that fear through an established logical process, not through shortcut techniques. And this is why this method is extremely important to understand how we approach current affairs. Now, let's look at this question. We all know this theme of energy transition, right? Take a look at this. Consider the following types of vehicles: full battery electric vehicles, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, fuel cell electric hybrid vehicles. Let's imagine I don't know anything about it. All I know is energy transition, because that's the word I had heard throughout the year. I don't know the specifics. Will you give up? No. Let's read the question further. How many of the above are considered as alternative powertrain vehicles? See, in the larger theme of energy transition, we are talking something new, which is not in common use right now. What is common use right now? Something based on fossil fuels. So, if you're talking about something alternative, you should see how many of them are considered as alternatives. Full battery electric vehicle. Is it likely that it is an alternative to fossil fuel engine? Okay. Hydrogen fuel? Possible. Fuel cell electric hybrid? Possible. So, is there a counter logic? At this point of time, I went by this logic. At this point of time, can you at least find one fact that is opposite to your assertion that it is a possibility? Can you tell me, no, it is not possible? Can you think of anyone? Example or one fact? If you can't, go ahead and apply this logic and mark. I don't know what a powertrain is, but I got this question right. This is how you should approach. Now, if you are preparing for 2026, you should know what a powertrain now is. What is a powertrain? Let's read that. Why is it important? What is the problem it is solving? Why alternative powertrain is discussed? What are the problems of that? That is what we call as previous year question analysis. Trend analysis, theme analysis. And this requires a lot of time. And definitely, if there is some support system which is systematizing it for you, you should use it. As far as the current affairs is concerned, we will try to see how we can help you as much as possible through this kind of an analysis. Okay? Now, take a look at this question. With reference to unmanned aerial vehicles. You know what are unmanned aerial vehicles? Okay, let's say you don't know what is. You know what is an aerial vehicle? Something that is flying. That's all you need to know. It is unmanned. So, it is likely that you can't sit inside it. So, it must be small. Consider the following statements. All types of UAVs can do vertical landing, like a helicopter. Maybe, we don't know. All types of UAVs can do automated hovering. Is automation so cheap? Why will they automate everything? What if I don't want an automated car? See, let's say for example, today we have an automatic car, gearless car, and a car with gear. Which is more expensive? Automatic. Why? Because it is much more simpler for user. So to solve that complexity problem, they're charging a bit more. Similarly, the logic will be here also applicable, right? Why will I make it? I want to give an option. If I am a good UAV pilot, I will do it myself. Why should I automate everything? So it's unlikely that this is correct. All types of UAV can use batteries only as a source of power supply. Why only battery? Why can't I directly put a solar panel and a cell there itself? Or why can't I directly use any other source? What is the logic of only battery there? Not necessary, right? So two are definitely wrong. How many of the above are correct? Only one, maybe, we don't know. Only two, no. All the three, no. None. It can either be these two. Which one will you pick? So you have to go by the logic now. All is a very extreme kind of a statement, and you are not allowing the possibility of an exception there. All types of UAV can do vertical landing. What if I don't want that option? I should be able to customize it. What logic are you giving me to say that they should definitely land vertically? There's nothing. It will increase the cost sometimes, maybe. So, none. Do you know anything about UAVs now before attempting this question? You need not know. You need not know about the guidelines. You need not know about the role of civil aviation, Directorate General of Civil Aviation, or if the Civil Aviation Ministry is involved or not. You don't have to know the drone manufacturing guidelines, nothing, which are there in the current affairs last year. Magazines were filled with pages of this data. People were preparing this, by hearting this, and they were not able to solve this question. What's the point? Common sense is not common. Like, unless and until you are cutting out the noise and focusing on what this question is asked one step at a time, it's unlikely that you will clear this exam. And it requires a calm, logical mind. So if you have FOMO that everybody is doing all of this, ask yourself, why should I do this? Did I do the bare minimum stuff that I'm supposed to do? If no, how do you think whatever you're doing is going to yield you result? Clear? Now take a look at this. Another question. By the way, this was explained back then, so that's the reason I'm giving this. In the context of electric vehicle batteries, consider the following elements. How many of you feel that science is very difficult and I don't know science? Mostly, science and tech is a bit scary for a few people. Cathode and anode, something that you must have studied in your 8th standard or 9th standard. You definitely know that if you are having bare minimum knowledge, cathode and anode require some kind of a metal. Okay? If that is not the case, you will have to figure out ways to bend the laws of physics to make it an anode or cathode. And UPSC is not testing science fiction yet. At least not now. So, with the available knowledge of what a cathode is or what an anode is, which is tested multiple times in the previous year questions, you will have to approach this question. Cobalt, graphite, lithium, nickel. Can you find the odd one out here? Graphite. So all the four is definitely gone. Second layer of questioning. Can you negate the fact that a metal, the three metals that you find here, can be used as a cathode or an anode? Sorry, cathode. Are you aware of a fact that, okay, I can't use this particular metal? No. Is UPSC expecting a scientist here? No, it is expecting someone who is logical. So what is most likely the answer? You remove one, you will arrive at least three of them. So I will give you one more way of approaching questions. The minimizer maximizer logic, as we call it. And I'll tell you the rationale also for that. So there are two kinds of questions in prelims: the old questions and the new subjects. Old questions include geography, polity, history, and to an extent economics. The new questions include environment, science and tech. Okay? So these are the dynamic areas, including this one also. Okay? So when examiner wants to test your logic, here they will test your depth. So to arrive at that one option which is right, you are supposed to have a logic which says that eliminate as many options as possible. The answer is most likely to be very focused on minimizing. the number of statements which are right. Let's say there are 4 statements, and if they are with respect to this subjects, UPSC traditionally is inclined to test the depth of your knowledge so that you eliminate as many questions as many statements as possible within the question. Okay, but when it comes to this, it will try to include as many question options as possible. Why is it like this? Let's say, for example, this science and tech question. You have to come up with a very strong logic. Let's say, for example, they made a question on AI. AI cannot make music. If they make a statement and make it as right, a few days later, Google will launch an AI model which is singing. So, can you go and debate in a court that, okay, this is right or this is wrong? No. Why will UPSC want to get into that kind of a mess? Today's science fiction will be tomorrow's reality. So UPSC won't test you on facts. It will test you on principles for both environment and science and tech. Similarly, if they say that no insect in the world will do something like this, how do you know? Did you go and check every insect in the world? What if there is a new discovery? So they will try to be as broad as possible. And if they are testing your logic there, they will try to eliminate one or the other option, like the one we have seen in the graphite question. So if you are aware of the principles here and the logics here, it's easy to score marks in this. Here you have to depend on knowledge plus other layers. Knowledge is definitely important. Over and above that, you have to practice more. That is why the subjects require multiple revisions. These subjects require broad awareness and clarity. Again, here you have to go by Pareto's principle of previous year questions. So this is the minimum maximum logic. Minimizer, maximizer logic. Okay? That is one more thing. So going by that, by default in science and tech, you used to get advice from YouTubers like me who will say, if you get any question, mark all the above. Science and tech, mark all the above. Never do that. Because the YouTuber might get views, but your attempt is at stake here. Any logic that you see will always have some reason behind it. Any jugaad that you see will never have a reason, it will have an emotion. That emotion is usually your desperation to clear this exam. They will either scare you or they will lure you. Put that aside and look at the logic. Clear? So, the logic that I gave is whatever the maximizer logic I gave here. Now, I have a reason to find the odd one out. UPSC is also watching all this kind of shows on YouTube. So, they would also want to test your logic. So, they placed graphite here. Anyone who is preparing the bare minimum of graphite would get this fact. It is there in news. For example, take a look at this. Differences between graphite and graphene. Some basic stuff. Again, I did not pick this material from random science journals. It is there in previous year questions and I had the opportunity to come across that article in Hindu. So I gave it. I thought it was important. It just worked. Again, important newspaper articles and the editorial themes therein. For example, there was this, take a look at this, cobalt, or what was that question that was asked? Some Congo based, yeah, cobalt. Take a look at this. But how likely, let's be very honest, how likely are you going to remember this table from a random newspaper article? Very unlikely. So for me, it will be very easy to claim this. But I myself did not remember this 68% fact. I barely remember that it must be some African continent. And it will be like that for you also. If you are good at recognizing patterns, that meta level cognition should work for you. And that is the only skill expected from you. They're not expecting that you remember the 68% of cobalt is found in Congo. No, that's not what they're expecting from you. Okay? Similarly, take a look at this. Consider the following: cigarette butts, eyeglass, lens, car tires. How many of them contain plastic? So you don't know how to approach this topic and you sit down and by heart every component that is out there and you'll get random topics like cigarette butts. So the next time there are, see, it is very nice to make memes after the exam is over. Every year you'll get some new meme material. When I was writing the exam, people were collecting chocolate wrappers, Kit Kat. I somehow wonder if Kit Kat sponsored that UPSC exam to increase their sales. Sometimes. There was this chocolate wrapper which had an option called Chandipur. Okay, the question was picked from that according to internet meme pages, but it may or may not be true. There must be some other article from where it picked. But is your selection based on you buying a KitKat wrapper? No, that's not how UPSC works. There are so many areas, so many other 99 other questions where you can showcase your talent. But no, in the fear psychosis, we will run behind this one question. 2019, there is this question, Denisovan. Some anthropologist guy must have marked it right. Even that is unlikely. But that one question decided whether you should pick up one material or not. Entire market was chasing facts. You will have one such question every year. It is not going to test your selection. Your selection depends on the rest of the questions. You will get 25 to 30 right. Toughest of the tough papers, let's imagine. You'll get 25 to 30 right. You will only know 25 questions. The rest of the chances depend on whether you are mentally present in that scenario to walk your way out of that situation, work your way out of that situation, and requires training, calm mind. If that's not the case, you will not clear this exam. I am hoping that this session is a reality check for you. Why previous year questions are important? Why do you require a system in place to train yourself again and again? Enough of strategizing. Start executing. You have all the resources that you need. Okay. So, for example, how can you use questions that are used? I mean, in your mock exams test series, how should you use questions? You should not fixate yourself on patterns. You should not fixate yourself on some facts given there. Use it to think of the larger picture. For example, take a look at this here. I gave one question something like this. Consider the following items: tea bags, etc., etc. And then I gave a clear-cut directive here in that year. You may get questions which look very random like this. In that case, rule of thumb should be, if it's durable, water resistant, clean, it's likely plastic or a plastic derivative. Is it synthetic? Is it petroleum derived? Is it elastic? The answer is yes to any of them. Mark it right. Okay. So it is not petroleum based. Like say for example in this question, it is not petroleum based. So when you are revising a question like this, you are getting information of a item that is there in news. Like say for example here PLA, polylactic acid, that is in news, and you're also getting a clue on how to answer those questions. For example, is it synthetic? Is it petroleum derived? Or is it elastic, durable, or waterproof? Apply that logic here. Is it synthetic? Yes. Eyeglasses? Yes. Car ties? Yes. You have your answer. This is how you have to prepare for prelims exam. And when we prepare current affairs going forward, this is how we'll be preparing. This is an orientation session of how to approach current affairs. What does it take to clear prelims exam? And why are we preparing it the way we are doing? No point chasing random information. Okay? I hope you found this session useful, and we will be doing some current affairs in this direction. Most likely we will begin with science and tech because it's the easiest area to master. We'll do some previous year questions and finish the current affairs also through these sessions. That's it for the day. Thank you.